Here's what nobody tells you about turning 45. It is not the birthday that changes you. It is the math. Somewhere in your 40s, if you actually sit down and run the numbers, something becomes visible that most people spend the back half of their working life trying not to look at directly. The decisions you make in the next 10 years will determine whether you retire on your own terms at 62, or whether you are still grinding at 68, working to maintain a lifestyle you built in your 30s and never figured out how to exit. 7 financial milestones. That is what separates the people who arrive at 65 with real choices from the people who arrive still showing up because they have to. If you are 35, this is the preview. If you are 45, this is the audit. If you are 50, this may already be the cleanup list. One rule does not change at any of those ages. The longer you wait, the less patient the math becomes. Milestone 1 is $0 in consumer debt. Not reduced. Not refinanced into a more comfortable payment. Gone. By 45, the only debt that belongs in your financial life is your mortgage. That is it. There is an entire category of financial content that sells debt as a tool: leverage, acceleration, sophisticated strategy. In narrow circumstances, some of that is technically true. But here is what the leverage argument consistently leaves out. It assumes the conditions that made the debt manageable stay stable, and your 40s are specifically the decade when conditions do not stay stable. At 45, your kids are in their most expensive years. Your parents are starting to need things, and some of those things cost money you have not budgeted for. Your career is at peak earning, which also means it is at peak exposure. Debt sitting under all of that does not just cost interest, it costs options. A $700 car payment does not feel like a trap in February when everything is fine. It feels like a structural failure in September when the furnace dies, your kid needs braces, and your company announces layoffs in the same 30-day window. Think of debt like fire. Used for a specific purpose, it can serve you. But the moment that purpose is finished, the fire should be out. By 45, the cooking is done. Milestone 2 is hitting the PAW target. PAW stands for Prodigious Accumulator of Wealth. The formula comes from Thomas Stanley, author of The Millionaire Next Door. Take your age, multiply it by your gross annual income, divide by 10. That is your minimum net worth target. If you are 45 earning $100,000, the target is $450,000. Earning $150,000, it is $675,000. Earning $200,000, it is $900,000. Write that number down, not because missing it ends everything, but because knowing where you stand tells you something honest about whether your behavior over the last 2 decades matched your income. The formula does not care how hard you worked. It only measures what you kept. What Stanley found should bother every high earner. The people with the strongest net worth at 55 and 65 were almost never the highest earners. They were the most intentional. The people with the weakest net worth relative to income were frequently earning excellent money and spending nearly all of it, maintaining a life that looked like wealth without building any. He called that second group under-accumulators of wealth. The defining characteristic was not recklessness. It was the assumption that a rising income earned them a rising lifestyle. Every raise became a new baseline. Every bonus absorbed into a higher version of normal. After 20 years of that, you can have earned a genuinely impressive amount and have surprisingly little to show for it. Milestone 3 is a clear investment strategy. One you could explain right now in plain sentences without looking anything up. Here is the question that reveals almost everything. Can you describe what you own, what it is costing you, and why you own it? Not the fun names. Plain English. No help. Most people cannot answer that because they enrolled in their 401k at 32 during a 20-minute HR session, picked something that looked reasonable, watched the balance grow, and assumed that meant everything was fine. Here is what fine at 32 might actually look like at 45. It might mean you have been paying 1.1% in annual fees on a portfolio that has grown to $300,000. The difference between that and a 0.04% index fund, compounded over 20 years, can be well over $150,000 in returns you will not receive. Not lost to a crash. Lost to a fee that does not appear on any statement as a line item called future wealth declined. It might mean the allocation you set for a 30-year. Old is still running at 45 with the same risk profile, and nobody has ever flagged it. Log into every account. Ask 3 questions about every fund. What is this investing in? What is it costing me? Why is it in my portfolio? If you cannot answer those, you may not have a strategy. You may have inertia. Milestone 4 is a 12-month emergency fund. Not 3 months, not 6, 12. The 3 to negative 6-month standard was built for someone earlier in life with fewer dependents and fewer things that could break. At 45, that person is not you. You have a home on its own maintenance schedule, multiple vehicles, kids who need you, and there is a real probability you have parents who will need you financially at a moment you cannot predict. At this stage, most of your wealth is locked. The 401k has early withdrawal penalties. Home equity requires a loan or a sale. You do not want to be the person dismantling that architecture at a penalty rate because the furnace died, the car needed a transmission, and your parents called the week after. A high-yield savings account or a money market fund, 12 months of essential expenses, liquid and accessible. That is the difference between a hard year and a financial crisis. When the hard year arrives, and it will arrive, you make decisions from strength instead of desperation. Milestone 5 is a credit score above 800. That number should not require grinding at this stage. It should be the natural result of 2 decades of responsible credit use. Payment history is 35% of the calculation. One missed payment lingers for years. Keep utilization below 10%, not 30%, which is what most people know. The scores that consistently clear 800 live below 10%. On a $20,000 limit, keep the balance under $2,000 when the statement prints. Do not close old accounts carelessly, and check your report. The FTC estimates 1 in 5 Americans has an error that is costing them points they legitimately earned and never lost. The reason this matters at 45 is not about today. It is about having the score in place before you need it. The day you need access and do not have it is not the day you want to find out. Milestone 6 is essential insurance coverage, matched to the life you are actually living. A study in the American Journal of Public Health found that more than 2/3 of personal bankruptcies in the United States are tied to medical events. Not reckless spending, not bad investments, a diagnosis. An accident, one event erased what took decades to build. 4 baseline protections belong in your life by 45. Health insurance matched to your family's actual medical reality, not just the cheapest plan available. If someone in your household has ongoing conditions, the coverage needs to reflect that. Auto insurance with serious liability coverage. The risk is not replacing your car. The risk is what happens when someone else's lawyer finds your assets. Homeowners insurance, reviewed for where you actually live. A generic policy for a generic house does not protect you from the specific risks of your specific address. And term life insurance large enough that if something happened to you tomorrow, your family would not make a single major financial decision from desperation. If you are self-employed or your income would be difficult to replace, disability insurance belongs on this list. Most financial disruptions do not come from death. They come from the inability to work, and most people have no coverage for that at all. Milestone 7 is the one that gets postponed the longest, and when it gets skipped, the cost falls on the people you love most. A 2025 study found that 55% of Americans have no estate plan. The age group with the lowest participation rate is not the young. It is 35 to 54, the exact group with mortgages, children, retirement accounts, and 2 decades of accumulated assets. If you die without a will, a court distributes your assets according to a formula written by a legislator who knows nothing about you or your family. If you have minor children, a judge who has never met them decides who raises them. 4 documents every 45 years. Old needs, a last will and testament, a durable power of attorney, a healthcare directive, and updated beneficiary designations on every account that allows one. That last one gets missed constantly. The beneficiary form on the 401k you filled out at 32 may still be the document that decides where the money goes. If you have meaningful assets and children who are still minors, a living trust is worth serious consideration. Assets pass directly to beneficiaries without probate. Less time, less cost, more control. Writing a will means confronting a version of the future nobody wants to think about. That discomfort is real. It is nothing compared to the chaos of not having one. Here is the full list. 1. Consumer debt gone, except the mortgage. 2. Net worth at or above the PA target. 3. An investment strategy you understand and could explain right now. 4. 12 months of liquid emergency savings. 5. A credit score above 800, in place before you need it. 6. Insurance matched to your real life. 7. A complete estate plan. None of this requires an exceptional income. None of it requires a perfect decade behind you. It requires the same thing every structural financial decision requires. You have to actually make them. 45 is not a deadline, it is a leverage point. The second half of your financial life can look fundamentally different from the first half. And the direction it takes is almost entirely determined by what you decide to do right now. While the runway is still real, and the compounding math can still do what it does when you stop interrupting it,